Dr. Ishita Shruti is here. It is a pleasure to have you here, ma'am. A very warm welcome to Dr. Ishita for being our resource person for this session. And welcome back, students, for today's second session on intersectionality and gender, a migrant perspective, which is going to be delivered by a specialist who has diverse work experience in the field of gender and migration. So we see men, women, and others migrate for similar reasons, out of will or compulsion or force. But have we ever thought that migration is very much a gendered phenomenon? Gender norms and expectations, power relations, and unequal rights shape the migration choices and experiences. So to explore the gender aspect of migration, we are honored to have with us Dr. Ishita Shruti, our speaker for today. Ma'am currently works as a head in Migration Data Analysis Division in International Organization of Migration, a UN intergovernmental organization. She has over 16 years of experience in managing migration mobility programs and research in low and middle income countries in both development and humanitarian context. She has presented papers at various national and international conferences and has also authored book chapters. She has also published a book review of Beatrix Hawser's book, Promising Rituals, Gender and Promotivity in Eastern India, in Interactions, Gender and Sexuality in Asia and Pacific. So without any further delay, we've been waiting for you, ma'am. So I welcome you for taking time to enlighten our students on a very important aspect of gender and migrant perspective. I request Dr. Ishita Shruti to kindly address the student now. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. And I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Because what happens is that when we work in the field, sometimes we miss this interaction with young minds. So I'm really very happy to be here. And I'm going to share my screen. So I'm going to switch off my video for the time being. And if you feel you are not able to understand anything, please feel free to raise your hand. And Dr. Suchi, I think you would be moderating because I may not be able to see the raised hand while I'm sharing
I
this.
would be doing that. So that's not
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So let me share my screen. Um, okay. So the way I thought we would be doing this is I have some videos. I have curated some like videos for you so that to make it more interactive, and I have some question and answer as well. So yeah, so that's how I plan to conduct the session. So I don't see how I can share my, um, okay. Um, I don't see how I can share my PowerPoint here.
So
It
shall
has my,
I do it on your behalf? Is it okay?
yeah, that would be fine. Yeah, should
So
be fine.
technical team may kindly play the PowerPoint presentation for Dr. Ishita Shruti. It might just take a couple of minutes. Yeah. So we may start the slideshow. Is it fine?
Yes, thank you. So yeah, so if you can play that first video, and then I would start the discussion. So yeah. I can't hear.
We need to unmute, technical team needs to unmute themselves. No, there's no voice in the video.
I mean, you're coming from a third world country very far away. You must have had a hard life.
Oh no, on the very contrary.
So you told us you write stories. What do you write about?
Can you please play from the beginning? Sorry, yeah.
Passion of my life.
So today we're going to hear your story. Well, tell us. Who are you? What do you do? Tell us more about yourself.
My name is...
I mean, our audience wants to know where you're coming from.
I'm coming from a very lovely family, a very beautiful country with so many amazing people and amazing food. But there are some problems as well.
Yeah, problems. Tell us more about the problems. I mean, you're coming from a third world country very far away. You must have had a hard life.
Oh no, on the very contrary.
So you told us you write stories. What do you write about?
Writing? Yeah, writing has been the passion of my life. I write to discover myself, to understand the world around me better. I write about...
Your sufferings, right? I mean, imagine you're a woman coming from a country which is hard for women to live in.
Yes, of course, there are problems everywhere. And yeah, I had problems and I had to fight for them. But I also feel confident. I feel enthusiastic. I want to change.
What happened? I can't hear you. It's so weird. Try to talk louder. Something's really wrong here. Something's deeply wrong.
They write me down in history with your bitter, twisted line.
Thank you. If we can go back to the PowerPoint.
Still like dust on her eyes. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom just because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room?
Welcome, everyone. First of all, I'd like to welcome our speakers.
Sorry, I think you have to yeah. So first slide, please. First slide after the. Yeah. So so you watched the video. I'm sorry, there's some technical issue there. So I just want to ask the student, what do you see there? What do you see here in this video? What was happening in the video? If anybody can volunteer.
Ma'am, can I?
Your name, please?
Ma'am, my name is Kriti.
Yes, Kriti, go ahead.
Basically, in that particular video which you showed just now, there was a girl who probably migrated from a third world country, and that person who was listening to her story was just trying to tell her that she belonged to that particular country and it is great for her that she has migrated to this particular country. Like, she didn't have many resources there and also stuff. And what was happening in the video was basically they were having a interview sort of thing where the person was asking about where she migrated from and all such stuff. But after a while it was seen that that particular lady who felt confident earlier, the place where she came from, lost her voice. She lost her voice in that particular country where she migrated to, because she was new to that particular country. And moreover, she didn't feel that confident as she was in the earlier one. That's my part of observation. Thank you.
Good. Anyone else wants to add there? They can add. If you have the same observation, then we can move to the other question.
Others who wants to come next? Ananya, Akriti. Okay, yes, Akriti, please add.
Good evening, ma'am. So my observation is this: because she was from a third world country, she was facing a sort of discrimination, a structural discrimination, which was going on there. And there was a double burden. Firstly, she was a woman, and secondly, she belonged from a place which is in the third world country list, and there is someone who is saying things to her that she belongs to a place which is not worth of living, and it is better, has been better for her to move to a newer side, a better side of the world. And now he is also saying things that
Akriti, your voice is
create
yeah.
hello.
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah, I'm saying that the person who is taking the interview is also mentioning stuff like your life in that particular country was not appropriate, it was not worth living, and you need to talk about that. You can't you She was talking about the good stuff that she was experiencing in her country, but that particular person wanted to hear about the bad experiences. And I felt this is some sort of orient despotism that happens with the third world country people, that they face the orientalism that they face. So that is my observation.
Very good. So now, Suchi, should I move to the other questions, or are there more participants here?
So whatever, there's one more participant who has raised hand. So Ramita, quickly, in very brief, you can speak your point.
Hello, good evening, ma'am. Hello.
Good evening, Ramita. We can hear you.
Okay, so this woman is from a migrant country. So basically, what she's facing is a dilemma that she has known a place for her lifetime, and now she has come to a new place. And now, when she's certainly asked, she tells that I come from a beautiful place which has certain problems. So she is leaving her home and she has come to this new country. And now, first she's a woman, second she's a migrant. So she's in a dilemma first, and then she's been constantly told down. And rather than listening to her opinion, she has been told to think what other people want her to think.
Thank you. Very good observation, and some of you have already kind of answered the other two questions I have. But for others, I would say that, so this is the question: if the main protagonist is, if she was not the woman, or she was not the migrant, do you think she would face the same kind of response from the interviewer, right? So you don't have to answer it. You can just write your response in the chat box, and then we can see that how many of you felt this way. So maybe you can just say whether if she was a man migrating from a third world country, would she have faced the same issue? Or if she was not a migrant, if she was a woman or national of the same country, whether she would have faced the same response from the interviewer. So you can write in the chat box, and then we move to the next slide. I have another video, and then we will talk about intersectionality after that video. Next slide, please. And no, the slide 2, yeah, that you have to copy that and play. Somehow the hyperlink is not working.
Hey, Betsy. Why the long face?
Hi, Dave. I just got off the phone with my wife. She's having issues at work still.
Oh, no. What's happening?
Well, as I'm sure you know, my wife is Hispanic. She moved to the United States from the Dominican Republic many years ago. Even though she's lived in the US for many years, people are sometimes still hard on her because of her accent.
Wow. Is that why there's issues at work?
Well, that's one of the reasons. Her boss seems to be passing her up for opportunities, and she's just had it. She thinks her boss doesn't like her accent. And after he found out that she was married to a woman, the tension at work got even higher. I feel so awful for her. I wish I knew how to help.
Has she talked to Human Resources about her concerns?
We have discussed that, and I think it will be the next step. It's just tough for her in this situation because she isn't sure where his hostility is coming from.
What do you mean by that?
Have you heard about the theory of intersectionality?
No, actually. What is that?
Intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage.
Could you explain that a little more simply?
Sorry about that. Basically, it's the idea that we are not just one identity. We have many parts of us. You, myself, and my wife are all part of the LGBTQ community, right?
Yes, and my boyfriend too.
Yeah, exactly. Except we all four belong to other groups that make us who we are. Unfortunately, some of us are part of other minority groups that are also discriminated against. My wife, for example, is a Hispanic, lesbian woman. These different points of her intersect, and it creates double and even triple discrimination at times.
Geez, Betsy, I hadn't even thought about that before.
That's all right, Dave. We've spent so much time focusing on segmented groups to promote diversity, but it goes so far beyond that. When my wife or anyone else that belongs to multiple minority groups feels discriminated against, it is difficult to understand the cause or even how to approach the situation. My wife, for example, isn't sure if she is experiencing homophobia, sexism, or racism, or even a combination.
Wow, that is really sad when you think about it. Intersectionality isn't something I'd ever considered before, but you're right. Even though we're all a part of the LGBTQ community, none of us experience life in the same way.
Exactly, Dave. Intersectionality is the belief that oppressions are interlinked and cannot be solved alone. This is the pivot of diversity. The more we take the time to get to know and understand people from all walks of life and stop trying to fit ourselves and others into one category, the better off we will be as a society.
I agree, Betsy. I hope things get better for your wife. We've made great strides in universal acceptance, but there's still a long way to go.
Thank you, Dave. I hope so too. And I definitely agree. It is important to truly listen to others and examine our own privileges. I hope we can find a solution with her boss and for anyone else experiencing these issues, both within the workplace and out.
Yeah, so we watched that video. Sorry, so in the first video, many of you said that she was a migrant woman, she was a migrant, she was a woman, she was from the third world country. Some of you said about the Orientalism and discrimination around it. So that's where we come to the point of intersectionality and what was also explained in the video, right? I will share this presentation. It's already shared. You can have this presentation as well. And just to give you a brief background, that this term was first coined by Crenshaw in 1989. She's a very famous African American lawyer, and when she went into many case laws, she realized that African American women face different sorts of discrimination and operation compared to the African American men, and that's how she came to this concept. And basically in the next slide we'll see that, but intersectionality in a very अगर हम बहुत simple terms में इसको बोले तो जैसे एक चौराहा होता है, हम लोग जब एक रेड लाइट पे रुकते हैं, वहां पे बहुत तरफ से रास्ते आते हैं और फिर वो एक जगह आके कन्वर्ज होते हैं। चौराहा को ले लें या राउंड अबाउट्स को ले लें तो 4, 5, 6, 7 रास्ते एक जगह आके कन्वर्ज होते हैं। So that's the concept of intersectionality, that they talked about double and triple discrimination, but what I see, it's a multiple. There are multiple layers. It's not just double or it's not just triple, and that's what it is. In the next slide please. I have just because I wanted to make this one very interactive, so I've just put in a bunch of social and structural attributes which can contribute to discrimination or operations or exploitation, right? And there are concepts, there are social structures or the attributes from different parts of the world. So for example, third world country, one geographical location, you know. So where you come from? Do you think the migrants from the Europe to US would be treated the same way a migrant from Bangladesh or migrant from Myanmar or migrant from India? You know, age, ableism, ethnicity, occupation, class, sexuality. So there are different social, cultural attributes which contributes to discrimination, right? So these are, I mean, we don't have time for that. If we have to, like, you know, if we go into each and every social attributes, we have to devote some time, and there is a concept behind it. But you know, for the to make it very brief, you can say that, okay, these are the kind of identity markers which makes us more different than others, or somebody is treated differently because of this, right? So and that's the arrow. There are only 4 arrows there, but there are multiple arrows converging, and that's what we are. So we are treated because what we are, from where we come from, and which class we belong to in India, which caste we belong to, of course, gender, and also our immigration status, right? So that's where I would stop when it comes to the concept of intersectionality, because I want to focus more on gender and migration, right? So we will take out of all that couple of attributes from here, that is immigration status and gender, and see that how migrant women, what are their experience, how they are discriminated, or what is the dynamics behind gender and migration or women migrants. Next slide, please. Thank you. So again, I would like to start, before going into the slide, I would like to start with the video. That's a 1-minute video which kind of explains gender and migration. Yeah, video number 3, please. Thank you.
Did you know that more women are migrating on their own than ever before? In this video, we'll tell you a little bit more. Migration can have a positive or negative impact on a migrant depending on the context and the situations they face. Migrant women in particular face situations of vulnerability that are related to gender-based discrimination and gender-based violence. Women face what is called an intersectional discrimination. They are discriminated against as migrants and as women. They may be victims of violence that is based on their gender, such as sexual and physical violence. In Latin America and the Caribbean, there are other forms of discrimination in addition to the structural gender inequalities. So migrant women may also face discrimination based on their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, their religion, or their gender identity. At the same time, migration can be very positive for women, giving them access to education, to jobs, to participating in the political and public life, and sometimes to live independently in ways they never have before in their lives. We also know that migration can be a way for migrant women and girls to escape gender-based violence in their families or their communities. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you in our next 1 minute on migration.
Yeah, so that was a very simple video, and I want to share a story with you before we go into what I have already put it in the slide. So when I was conducting my PhD on Indian migrants in Cambodia, I studied even middle class migrants who migrate to different countries. So I was interviewing this woman from Delhi, very well paid. She left a very well paid job and migrated to Cambodia along with her husband. And it was quite interesting. I said, you know, why did you take this decision? And that brings me to the migration decision as well. So whereas her husband migrated because he was getting a good career jump to a better company with a better pay, I said, why did you leave your job and come with him? So she said that she was living, they're very well off in Delhi. She was living in a joint family with her in-laws, and she really did not cope well there. So even though she has a very highly fulfilling job, she was really struggling to adjust in that joint family scenario, and then she thought that moving to Cambodia would actually help her sort out her life. So that's what it is. So when we talk about gender and migration, immediately the image which comes to our mind is the poor women migrating for low paid job, or low skilled women migrating to different places to work in a very exploitative conditions. But that's not what it is. You know, like this dynamic of gender and migration is there in all classes and in all social groups. So that's where it is. And I would present some data here. You know, I'm heading Migration Data Analysis Division, so I cannot do this course without presenting some data. So according to World Migration Report, and I also have some suggested reading for all of you, and World Migration Report is one of them. Out of total migrants, 42% is women. And when we are saying female migrants, they also constitute women who migrate on their own and women who join their families. Still, it is not as high as male migrant workers. No, sorry, we are only talking about female migrant workers here, but it is increasing. And if you look at some of the literature, if you go back, if somebody is interested in migration and learning about migration history and all that, you know, till 70s, there were hardly any literature on gender and migration or women migrant workers. So they were completely invisible in terms of research, in terms of literature. And though only after post 70, when there was other you know, gender and development, women in development, those kinds of conceptual and UN push for more gender equality started coming into public domain, then people also started, the migration researcher and the expert also started looking at gender and migration, or women in migration stream and all that. So there was definitely a lack of scholarship on gender and migration. And basically what I have also explored in my PhD, and there are now available literature, is that the decision-making process, you know, for men migrants and women migrants vary very differently. So if you go for just a simple quantitative analysis and you ask group of men and group of women, why do you want to migrate? They would say for a better job or for a better life, both of them. But if you go into the deeper into that analysis, you would find that the process of decision making was very different for men and for women. You know, so the existing attributes, domain or power hierarchies decides who migrates, when migrates, where migrates. And definitely women are not every woman has that agency to decide on all that compared to the male men counterparts. Marriage migration is a very big research area when it comes to like especially in sociology. You know, in all the societies where we follow patrilineality, it's always women who has to leave and relocate, right? So that migration is quite well documented also. And I've suggested reading for all of you for that. But until and unless what increasingly being realized is, until and unless we take the experience of women migrants, we cannot have a holistic picture about how a migration work, what are the experiences, what are the lacunae in the process, and all that. There is another video on discrimination against migrant workers, so I would like to play that. Video on that slide.
Yeah, I think they're about to play that. Yeah. Can we have the volume, please? A bit of volume. Yeah.
So get this, every 1.07 seconds, a new user.
Yeah, so I think, Suchi, I would stop there if there are any questions. Let's have the question and answer session. And then I have 2 more videos at the end. We can watch that at the end, and I would like them to do a small assignment on those videos, and they can submit it to you later. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely okay.
Okay.
So I think we can have your video now. Great. So we have first question from 2 people have raised hand. Kriti, you can go with your first question, and other people start writing in the chat box so I know that who to call first. So Kriti, please unmute yourself, put on your video and ask question.
Okay, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. I'm Kriti from Pol Science Department, 2nd year. So my question for you is that you talked about marital migration and work-related migration, but what I felt like is trafficking of women, like selling of them in the markets and as a labor or as a sex worker is more discriminatory in nature, and that type of migration is very harmful for them. So what's your take on that particular thing?
Yeah, of course. Just to give you a little more conceptual clarity there, we don't consider trafficking as a voluntary migration. So that's a different kind of concept.
That may be involuntary.
Involuntary, yes. So that's I think that's the first point where you need to keep in mind when it comes to trafficking, so trafficking and that's not voluntary migration. But having said that, what we have realized, we have just conducted a nationwide trafficking assessment in Bangladesh. And what we have realized when we conducted in all 64 districts in Bangladesh is that it's quite intertwined. So what happens that women and men, so trafficking is not just for women, it's also for men. They go as it was a voluntary choice, but when they go on the way or they reach a destination, then they become a victim of trafficking. Of course, that's the highest form of exploitation. And there are lots of attention being given by various organizations, including the one I am working with, on trafficking, on smuggling. There's also a concept of smuggling of migrants, and that concept is same like smuggling for gold or smuggling for drugs. So you take, I'm not sure how many of you have read about boat tragedies in Mediterranean. The people who want to cross over to Europe, and all that is actually smuggling networks. So they smuggle human being. So, and again, trafficking and smuggling is quite interlinked. So of course, that's the highest kind of forms of exploitation. But what we have to keep in mind is that even though it's a migration by choice, it's a voluntary migration, women face different discrimination because they are women and they are migrant and they come from third world country, or they come from lower caste, or they come from lower class, or they are unskilled, or they are not educated. So all these actually converge and create that exploitative condition for them. Over.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
So can we have Ramita with the next question?
Good evening, ma'am. Dr. Shruti, so those who have migrated, women especially, for positive reasons, not for marriage, not with families, who have for higher education or for employment. So what is the positive trend do you see in this area for women who are migrating for their own purposes rather than a family obligation or a societal obligation?
Of course, there are studies which talks about how women gain more decision-making power, economic empowerment, and all that. So that's all positive. And I would say, being a migrant woman all my life, if migration is well informed and well governed and going through a regular way, it is extremely I mean, it gives you a different kind of freedom, you know. So again, I'm quoting back to the draft study which we have in Bangladesh. Many, you know, when we ask about the push and pull factors of migrants, many people said that is anonymity in the foreign land is one of the biggest pull factor, right? So migration give you that, because you that's everything is unknown. So there are fears, there are challenges, but at the same time you have that freedom of anonymity. I'm sure there are students from sociology as well, and you must have read about how migration to the city gives a sort of emancipation from the caste-based discrimination, right? So it's much more fluid, those boundaries in the city. Well, there are studies now that even in cities that's quite prevalent, but generally it's much better in a city than in compared to the village. So in terms of the decision making power, economic empowerment, migration has of course a very positive impact in lives of women. But also there are other conditions. Again, when we see migration or migrant women from intersectionality prism, what we have to see is that whether the women get the same opportunities like the men. You know, so then when you're analyzing, because you're all student and you may grow up and may take up the research in migration or in gender and migration and that type of field, you have to see that whether the opportunities are same for the men given to the women were same as given to the men migrants, you know. And the last video which we talked about the different policy issues where, okay, women below 30 cannot migrate. So government actually thinks that they are doing this policy to save women from exploitation, but actually that is very counterproductive for their empowerment as well. Over.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ramita. Can Uzma come next? Uzma? Uzma, you want me to read your question or you want to come live? Okay.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, I just want to ask that the laws like right to education, which is based on the principles of education for all, can improve the life of migrants or not?
Of course, you brought a very good point when it comes to migration, and not education per se. Of course, education helps everyone, right? Migrant or non-migrant. But when it comes to skill and non-skilled category of migrants, that plays a huge role in terms of bringing in positive impact in lives of migrants, their families, and their communities. So what happens that when you are skilled migrant category, your contract type, your recruitment, your whole journey is very different when if you are in low skill or unskilled category, right? So for example, skilled migrants. So for example, we have been migrating for last 13 years, but we never faced any exploitation. Nobody cheated us on our contract. We read our contract. We get our employment contract before we migrate to different country. But what happens to the unskilled migrants? You must have read a lot of stories from India, and there is a whole lot of story from Bangladesh about how they are being cheated from the recruitment stage itself. So that's where education and skill comes in, you know, when it comes to migrants. So the right to education, though it's only at the school level, but of course if everybody gets education for all kind of thing, would obviously have a positive correlation with migration.
Okay, great. So we have another question from Komal. Komal, can you hear me? I think she's lost the connection. Gagandeep, can you go on with the next question? People have been privately messaging me that they want to write their questions, so please write quickly. We have very less time. Shraddha, can you ask your question, please? Noise hai to koi baat nahi, you can ask. No problem. There are people who are asking me to. So there are some observation which I want to read out, and maybe ma'am you can give your feedback on that. When you asked if there would have been a man in the first video, if there would have been a man instead of a woman or not from a third world country. So there is a response from Anjali, not in exact the same manner, because people or society make the situation for women more vulnerable. Then there's another comment from Gagandeep about the first video where she says, we can see in the video that woman was being interrupted while she was trying to talk about her lived reality. The man interviewing her had biases already about third world countries, and so he was mansplaining her own lived reality. The way he assumed it should be for the third world country. I feel gaslighting and mansplaining are common phenomenons and happens to women who want to speak up. So very valid point, and I'm very happy that Gagandeep made this comment. So maybe we can have your response on this.
Of course, I'm happily surprised to have that that clarity of thought from this young group of students. Yeah, you're very right, and you know, when it comes to mansplaining and gaslighting, it's not just for migrant women. I think working women face that all the time, right? So that's one thing. And I would just like to highlight, because I feel you're all very young, and you know, you will get into some leadership position in upcoming years. One of the constant thing which we keep on hearing is that this is an example. I mean, this is a meme, but I would say that you know, when you apply for a job, when you will apply for a job, you get a terms of reference. The vacancy notice is published, and so there is a meme going around, especially in UN agencies, that if you have there are 10 requirements, and a woman sees it and says, oh, I follow this 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 9, yes. Oh, I don't have this 10th one, sorry, I cannot apply for this job. Whereas a man who sees that one, he would have 7 irrelevant, 7 requirements is not what he possesses, and he would have 3, and he said, oh, I'm pretty good at it, let me try it out. So that this is a very common joke or meme which we all hear, and that's what it is. You know, men come from because of the upbringing, and you know, zillions of years of privileged upbringing. They come from a very no, I know all kind of stand, and that video, the first video, and why I kept that as a first video, actually throws a lot of light, which you have already pointed out. Women from third world country, man from a first world country. So there are already different layers of power dynamics which you can see, and that's what it represented in that video. So I'm very happy to get all those comments. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Same here, very happy with this kind of response and this kind of observation. So we have a last question from Shraddha. She's been trying for long, but could not connect her audio. And after that, we can play the 2 videos which we have to. So Shraddha asks, we normally get to know that migrants face more sexual harassment. What should be the stand of government on this situation? Because that migrant women don't have much knowledge about constitution and other legal practices of the particular country. also at many times the constitution doesn't even cover that. And that's my own point and my own experience. So ma'am, if we can have your response on this, and then we can go ahead with the PowerPoint.
Thanks. Very valid question again. There are 2-3 different responses to that. One is that we cannot generalize all countries in one stroke. Because there are countries where migrant women actually get more legal protection compared to their origin country, to their home country. So, for example, I know about UK that there are laws around migrant women, around domestic violence, and they put extra effort in terms of implementation of those laws among South Asian communities. We all know why. So it depends on where women are migrating, which country they are migrating to, right? So for example, in the Middle East, there's huge issue. I'm not sure, I'm out of India for many years now, but if you open Bangladesh newspaper, you would not, there are no days where we don't hear a couple of stories around extreme level of exploitation, sexual violence women face in the Gulf countries. Again, not all Gulf countries, but many Gulf countries. I'm very sorry to say that I don't have an answer there. We have been trying to work with governments, different governments, to have better protection for migrant workers in general, but women migrants in particular. But the issue here is that the labor laws are not discussed bilaterally between two governments. They are well within the governments are well within their sovereign rights to enact the labor laws. And migrant workers, whether they are national migrant workers or like in India, we see from one state to other state, or the international migrant workers, internal or international, they have to come within those labor law frameworks. So only a way forward, which we have been trying, being a UN Migration Agency and also ILO and UN Women, there are other agencies who work for rights of migrant workers, is have a very clear government-to-government agreements. So for example, I'll just give you again another example of Bangladesh. Bangladesh and Saudi Arabia has an agreement, government to government. We call it G2G agreement, where they say that, okay, Bangladesh, 50,000 Bangladeshi workers, I'm just giving you a number, will go to Saudi Arabia every month, and this is the process. These are the minimum, these are the different categories of employment and blah, blah, blah. But what we have increasingly seen is that gender aspect is completely missing. It's changing now. It's changing because of the more evidence we are trying to generate there. But again, it all depends on the destination country. So until and unless we improve the migration governance in the destination country, the origin, the source country like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal has very little to contribute there. Having said that, when it comes, so in terms of, when you talk about India, not Bangladesh, we have a lot of policy intervention are needed in terms of governing internal migrants, right? So for example, I'm right now, I am in Kerala. Because of COVID, I'm working from here. The state government of Kerala has a very clear policy on internal migrants and international migrants. Women migrants, both international and internal. I think that's where it comes to. So as a national government, especially in India, I think the governing internal migration is the need of the hour. And we have all seen what happened post-COVID. Like, we were thrown under the bus. We had no clue how to manage the migrant crisis here. Over.
Very true. So can we have the technical team play the slide, and then there are two videos which we have to play after that. Meanwhile, can we take one more question, a very quick question from Tanupriya? Tanupriya, you raised hand. You want to ask question, or shall we move ahead?
Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I did it by mistake. I have lowered my hand.
Okay, Tanupriya, no worries. Okay, so shall we just play the slideshow?
Basically, I want to play these two videos, and I would just wanted to give them a perspective of what's happening with Rohingya refugee women. So there are two videos on them. And I'm not sure how many of you know that Bangladesh is currently hosting around 1 million Rohingya refugees who fled violence in Myanmar. So these are the two videos, and then I have a small assignment for you. Over.
Good to Nelibesha Mother husband দেখা হয়ে দেয় আর দেখানো অন্য হয়ে গিয়ে আর তোই না হয় খুঁজি না হয় এখন চিন্তা করতেছি বাচ্চা কিভাবে মানুষ করব ওষুধ খাওয়া করিব বাপটাই টাকা পয়সা লাগবে চিন্তা আর বাইরে ডাক্তারখানা গেলে ওইব কিনা সুদ হইব কিনা এনাকে তো চিন্তা হইতো তো টাকা পয়সা লাগিত আর বুঝি মেশিন দিলে মেশিনের কাজ করি আমি বাঁচতে এবারে দেখাশোনা করি ভাই ওষুধ পাতি হবে ভাই আমি এই বাচ্চাদের ভালো মা হইতে চাই আর বাচ্চারা আদর যত্ন করি পালতে চাই ভালোবাসা দিই আদর দিই
Puedo por vuelta aquí de Bulangara. Ranyo Mari, Uyo Mari, Taina Mari, Anti Ranyo Mari. Can I so what on Mari? Baca, Bagada can we do? Ari on Mari, Taina Mari, can we do more to Gavili? Money on a Sanjo, I will need Sanjo, Sanjo, Mari. Naman ako doon, kagulipan na, di ba lang ako na. Gagawin ba nito? Basta dito dila, tayo yung na, di ba gusto ba niya ko? Di ba niya, tayo yung na, hanga niyo, jauh di ba, ala ba yung jauh di ba? Yung pwede ako jauh di ba?
We can go back to the slide. Yeah, so the assignment, I'm not sure, Suchi, how you want to take it. It's just you can write around 500 to 700 words that what kind of different social and structural attributes are contributing to the vulnerability of these two women. one young single mother, another that old lady. So that's what, very simple assignment. And
Yes, sure. So I'm sure students will be more than happy and more than enthusiastic to go ahead and find out the answers to that and what they think is correct. So do we have a next slide also?
yeah, so I just have some suggested like references for them if they want to look at more into gender and migration and intersectionality. So I can just like couple of minutes and we can just.
So the technical team may kindly play the slide again, the last slide.
Would be good that if we can share this presentation with all of them, so then they can even refer to that. So I've made very like, you know, just four kind of references, which I think would be interesting for you all to go through it. You know, last one is World Migration Report, which is just give you a perspective around what's happening in the world. It comes every 2 years. And then, you know, the working papers series on women and migration. And then the first two is more kind of conceptual and theoretical papers. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, so great. Can we end the slide? So great. Thank you so much, ma'am, for agreeing to be a part of this session and for such an informative lecture that has guided our students and all of us, the team members, as well as the faculty members, on the issue of intersectionality and gender from migrant perspective, which is what we see that it has not been talked about much when we discuss gender and intersectionality. We generally ignore this aspect. So I'm sure that our students have gained a deeper understanding about gender norms and its consequences on migration. So thank you very much, Ishita ma'am, for the session, and I extend heartfelt gratitude for your lecture and your time. Now we bring this session to an end, and as we bring this lecture to an end, I would like to inform our students that you have lectures for tomorrow on 7th November from 12 p.m. to 2, and then from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. As being a Saturday, we have more lectures on that day. So please be ready and be on time. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really an honor to have you. Thank you, students. So we may just start.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye. Take care. Bye.